I've enjoyed playing RuneScape more than any other game, so it seems appropriate to begin the first video here. Of the many creatures in RuneScape, the gnomes are known for their cooking. They serve cocktails, breads, and cookies, and I've wondered what it tastes like. I'll be making the gnome restaurant's cheese and tomato batta. The ingredients can be purchased through the gnomes: Gian's dough, equa leaves, tomato, and cheese. Luckily, the cookbook is available to explain the recipe. Based on the book's description, we'll be needing 2 3/4 cups of flour, 1 3/4 cups of water at room temperature, 2 teaspoons of salt, 10 grams of active yeast, a couple of tomatoes, cheese, in which I use mozzarella, and fresh basil. Add your flour to a bowl along with the active yeast on one side and the salt on the other side. This is to prevent the salt from interfering with the yeast's activation. Add your water to the bowl and incorporate the ingredients thoroughly. Now you can't see what it looks like from this angle, but this is what your hands will look like. Add flour to your bench or workspace. Begin kneading your dough. Try to fold in the sides with the palms of your hands and press into the dough. The purpose is to add pockets of air. Knead the dough for about 15 minutes. Don't be afraid to be a bit more rough with the dough. Add some olive oil to a square container and use your hand to coat the inside thoroughly. Put the dough into the container and secure it. Let it rest in a warm environment for 2 hours. After 2 hours have passed and the dough has risen, preheat the oven to 475 degrees Fahrenheit. While the oven is heating, add some flour to your bench and carefully move the dough. Use a bench scraper to cut the dough into sections. Since this is a gnomish food, I'm going to be cutting it into 4 sections to make it smaller. Line a baking sheet with parchment paper and carefully move the cut pieces onto it. Try to stretch it into place, pop it into the oven, and bake for 20 minutes. The cookbook mentions 2 important things. Equa leaves are only added to the bread as the last step. Second, the batta's creation was suggested by a gnome called Wingstone. Wingstone came up with the idea after hearing of a human-made food called pizza. RuneScape has an examine feature which offers a brief description of the various items in the game. If you examine equa leaves, it only tells us that it is, quote, a common ingredient in gnome cuisine. However, if we look at the first version of the game, RuneScape Classic, examining an equa leaf tells us that it is a small, sweet-smelling leaf. With everything considered, it's very likely that equa leaves are basil leaves. Finally, dice your tomatoes and shred your cheese if it isn't already shredded. Cut slits into your bread and carefully pry it open and make room for the cheese and tomato. Try to add them gingerly. I made the mistake of adding basil leaves here, but it should be reserved for the very end. After adding the cheese and tomato to your bread, put it back in the oven for another 5 minutes. Take them out of the oven and sprinkle on the basil leaves as the final step. They're ready to be eaten, and you may be expecting me to sample mine